What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another sit down video. This is going to be a story time. This story time took place about 6 or 7 years ago, or maybe even 8 years ago. So I was a nurse. Well, duh, of course I was a nurse. But anyway, I was working at a local hospital and I believe I was staff. I can't remember if I was staff on their intermediate care unit, right? Unit was super busy. We always had 4 patients. It was just madness. So on this particular day, I came in, got my assignment, and of course, before I do anything, I always go into the room, update the whiteboards, check my patients to make sure they're alive. So that's key, okay? New nurses, nursing students, always check your patients immediately after report or do bedside report so that way you know they're alive and that they're well, okay? So I went to go check my patients, and one of my patients was this young man. He was no older than 30. Let's just say he was like maybe 28 or 29. And I forgot the diagnosis he was in for, but it had something related. It was an endocrine related disorder. It wasn't diabetes, ketoacidosis. I think he was in HANK, H-H-N-K. I don't know, somebody's going to correct me in the comments, but I can't remember the diagnoses. But it required him to be on an insulin drip. It had something to do with his pancreas not functioning in the way it's supposed to function. So he was on an insulin drip, meaning that I would have to check his blood sugar every hour, myself or the technician, which I don't even know if we had a tech, because it was not uncommon for us not to have techs working on that unit, right? So I go in, I introduce myself to him, and you know, he starts chopping it up like, oh, you gonna be my nurse today? Like, he just had all the conversation. So I move along with my day. I'm checking his blood sugars. I did not have to adjust the insulin drip. It was just at like a flat rate, which was cool. Checking his blood sugars. And then like around 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he says to me, he was like, listen, I've been in this I've been in this hospital room all day. You know, this is like my 4th day here. I'm really tired. Is there any way I can go outside for a fresh air break? Like, he wanted to go outside to get some fresh air. And I was like, absolutely not, because number one, you're on an insulin drip. Insulin is a high risk drug. And then he was also connected to the monitor. So I'm explaining to him like, no, you can't go outside because you're on the monitor, continuous telemetry monitoring. So you can't leave because you're connected. And plus you have this high risk drug that you're on. So he's like, man, I gotta go outside. Like, come on, you need to let me go. Absolutely not, sir. So like around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the medical resident comes to round on him. So the resident goes in and is chopping it up with him. Well, he's chopping it up with the resident. They're talking back and forth. Resident is explaining to him the plan of care and that he's probably going to be on the drip for another 24 hours. And, you know, it's a possibility he might spend another 2-3 days in the hospital. So this time he's like, well, I'm overhearing them because I'm sitting at the nurse's station. So he's saying to the resident, you know, I was asking the nurse earlier, is there any way I can go outside for fresh air because I'm really tired. I've been in here for such a long time. And, you know, it's really affected my mood. Why the resident gonna say, oh yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with you going outside to get some fresh air. It's really nice outside. Yeah, just go ahead. Yeah, I give you permission. You can go ahead and do that. So I'm sitting at the nursing station like, I know this man did not just finesse the doctor, who's a resident. I can't remember if he was a 2nd or a 3rd year. He definitely was not a 1st year resident. But I was like, he really finessed this man to go outside when I already told him he's on an insulin drip and he's connected to the monitor. So the resident walks out the room and I said, excuse me, doctor. I said, did you just give him permission to go outside? He was like, yeah, I don't see anything wrong. He can go. I said, are you going to write that in a non-nursing order that you're allowing the patient to go outside? I said, because I'm not, and I don't want to be responsible for that, right? He's on an insulin drip. So the resident is like, oh yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll put a non-nursing order to cover him going outside. So I said, okay, cool. Of course, like 15 minutes passed, no order goes in. All of a sudden, I hear the monitors and everything going off. When I go in the room, who is standing up, getting dressed, confused with the t-shirt because he's connected to the IV, which has the insulin drip. So he's like trying to figure out how to put the t-shirt on. So I was like, you know what? Okay. So I paused the insulin drip. I disconnected him for a little while just so he can get dressed, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna go sit out front of the hospital. I'm not gonna go anywhere. I just want to sit outside in the front. And I was like, well, your doctor said you can go. That has nothing to do with me. I said, but I just checked your blood sugar and you need to come back up within the next 30 minutes so that way I can check it again at 5 o'clock. He was like, okay. So he puts his sweatpants on, takes the gown off, and he starts heading down. He unplugged the IV. He already had a whole plan. Unplug the IV, whatever. I paused the monitor and he is on his way. As he turned the corner to leave off the unit, I went straight to that chart because at this time we were still able to write notes in the chart. It was not like required to document notes in the computer. So I wrote a note on what was taking place or whatever the case is, that the patient did receive verbal permission from the resident who's going to place an order for the patient to go sit outside. All right. So he leaves now and it's like around 4:30-ish, 4:40-ish. And I get busy because remember, it's end of shift. It's crunch time. There's other people that needs finger stick checks. I need to follow up on vital signs. I need to give my 5 and 6 o'clock meds. Dinner is coming. I got to make sure my patients are cleaned up because y'all know we don't leave dirty patients for the oncoming shift. And I got busy. So it wasn't until it was like 6:15 p.m. I sat down and I was like, oh my God. I was like, my patient did not come back. So somebody was like, who? The guy that was in that room that left earlier with the IV pole? I was like, yes, the one on the insulin drip. He has not come back. They were like, oh, do you want to do a code gray? So I think the code, the colored codes are nationwide. Code gray is the code for elopement. So usually, and this never fails, between the hours of like 2 and maybe 5 p.m. in the hospital, I guarantee you somebody's going to call a code gray. And usually it's a code gray, African-American male, white t-shirt, gray sweatpants, black hoodie, gray sweatpants, code gray. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to call a code gray on him. I'm going to go outside and go look for him. So I went outside, looked left, looked right. He is nowhere to be found. So I go back upstairs and I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy probably left. So I paged the doctor. Of course, I didn't get a call back right away to let them know that, hey, the patient that you allowed to go outside, he is nowhere to be found. He's on an insulin drip and he's due to have his blood sugar checked. As a matter of fact, he should have had 2 blood sugars checked by this time because it's like 6:30 now at this point, right? So I'm sitting at the nurse's station and I'm like, let me call the patient. So I don't know why instinctively I did not pick up the hospital phone to dial his number. I had my cell phone out. So I looked his information up and I called his cell phone. Cell phone's ringing, 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 no answer. It is now like 7:05, night shift is coming on. And as night shift is trickling in, guess who is coming around the corner with the IV pole, right? But the IV pole, he lowered it all the way to the ground. So he's walking back in smiling like something's funny. And I'm looking at him like, you out of line. I was like, you really out of line? I said, you've been gone for 3 hours. Where were you? Nah, I was out front. I said, no, you were not. I said, I came outside looking for you and you were gone. He was like, all right, my bad. He was like, my homeboy came to pick me up because I had to go over east to go take care of some business. I said, you had to go where? Nah, I had to go over east, you know, zone 7. No, I forgot what zone he said, but he was like, yeah, you know, I'm from zone 17. I'm from zone 17. And I guess he's trying to explain to me the neighborhood codes and all of that and why he had to go over east to go take care of some business. I was like, listen, keep all your personal information, all of that. I don't want to know. I said, just please, let me get you back in this room. Connected him back up to the wire, to the monitors. I went, got the finger stick machine, and I checked his blood sugar. Thank God it was within normal limits. And I was like, you are really out of line. I said, you were supposed to go outside for like no more than 30 minutes and come back. Yeah, I know, but you know, my homeboy came and I said, so why is the IV pole like this? He was like, well, in order for me to get it to fit in the car, what you think? Like, I had to lower the pole. I had to finagle it so that way it could fit into the car. I said, you know what? It's always Baltimore. Trust me, always an exciting day working in Baltimore. So anyway, as I'm getting off that night, it's pouring down rain. It's pouring. So I pull up in front of the house and I'm tussling with like my hood, my work bag, I have a lunchbox, I have my cell phone in the hand, I have my keys, and my phone accidentally dials his cell phone number back. Remember I had dialed him earlier, just like impulsively trying to like find out where he was? And that was the last outgoing call in my log. Why my phone automatically dialed him back? So when I'm looking at my phone, I was like, oh shucks, my phone is calling somebody. So in the rain, in the midst of all the craziness, I hurried up and I like ended the call. Get into the house, putting everything down. My phone starts ringing. So I'm looking at the number and I'm like, is this his number? And is he calling me back? So I sent a text. I said, sorry, that was a mistake. Why he gonna text me back like, nah, Ebony? That's what he was calling me all shift long until he kept calling me Ebony. He was like, nah, Ebony, that wasn't no mistake. You really was trying to call me. I see you. I see you. I was like, this young man is out of control. He is so out of control. So of course, went to bed, woke up the next day because I had to go to work. And once I got to work the next day, I went in, you know, got my report, got my updates, did my rounds. And as soon as I walked into the room, he's like, oh, hey, Ebony, you're back again today. And I looked at him and I was like, let me explain something to you. I said, my phone accidentally called you back. And by no means was that me dialing you intentionally. He's like, yeah, but why you had my number in your phone in the first place? I said, because I was looking for you since you disappeared on me yesterday. And I used my cell phone to call your number, which was inappropriate. But at the time, I was so flustered that you weren't there. I just used my cell phone and I dialed you. He was like, nah, you was trying to call me. You was trying to call me. I was like, please stop. You're being inappropriate. Okay? That's it. But that's one story that's always stuck with me because I could not believe that this man really finessed the doctor into going downstairs, got into a car, lowered the IV pole, and was gone for like a whole 3 hours. One of the things that I did to protect myself, obviously, was initially when the doctor gave him permission, I did write a note saying that the patient received permission. When I realized that the patient was gone, I put another note in, including the fact that I did go outside looking for him. I did notify the physician, and I did call the patient's phone number, which I did not get an answer. I put all of that in a note. And when the patient finally came back, I wrote a note that the patient finally arrived back. You know, what were his vital signs when he came back? What was his blood sugar? I did include all of that information. And I also submitted an incident report just in case anything was to come up. Because oftentimes the thing with patients is that when they leave out of the hospital building, and sometimes patients will go outside because they want to get fresh air break, or like they want to go down to the cafeteria or to the gift shop. Anything can happen. Like, I'm not saying that he did anything illegal or whatever the case is, but it's not uncommon for patients who have IV access to have, you know, to use illegal substances via the IV. So I submitted an incident report just to cover myself and just so that the hospital was aware that, listen, we had a man that was here on a telemetry monitor. He was on an insulin drip and he left the hospital with verbal permission from the physician for 3 hours. And I included everything that I did, and you know, the fact that he returned wasn't in any distress, nothing out, everything was within normal limits, just to cover myself. So that's my story for today. I just wanted to share that with you guys because it's one of the nursing stories that have stuck with me, and I will see you guys in another video. Thank you all for watching.